Marriage in 2023. 2 people, 1 Wi-Fi, 0 secrets. That's what I used to think anyway, back when I believed my wife Veronica actually loved me instead of just tolerating me like a subscription service she forgot to cancel. My name is Alex Riley, and I'm 39 years old with graying temples that my 15-year-old daughter Ruby says make me look distinguished but not ancient. I work as a tech consultant, which means I fix other people's computer problems while my own life crashes harder than Windows 95. The irony isn't lost on me. Our house sits in one of those upper-middle-class suburbs where everyone pretends their marriage is Instagram perfect while secretly plotting their spouse's social demise. Modern architecture, all glass and steel, cold beneath the surface. Just like my relationship with Veronica. "Alex, we need to talk," Veronica announced one Tuesday evening, her voice carrying that particular tone wives use when they are about to rearrange your entire existence. She stood in our kitchen, all 36 years of her looking like she'd stepped out of a fitness magazine. Her job as HR director at some corporate firm had taught her how to deliver bad news with a smile that could freeze hellfire. "About what?" I asked, though my gut already knew this conversation would end with me sleeping in the guest room. "About us, about our marriage, about how we've grown apart." Ruby looked up from her homework at the kitchen island, her sharp eyes catching the tension immediately. "Should I go upstairs?" "No, stay," I said. "Your mother and I can discuss whatever this is like civilized adults." Veronica's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the marble countertop. "I've been thinking about what Tasha and Beth said at book club yesterday, about modern relationships, about how traditional marriage is just an outdated social construct." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Book club? What book were you reading? 50 Ways to Wreck Your Marriage." "Don't be sarcastic, Alex. This is serious." "Oh, I can see that. Please continue with your groundbreaking relationship philosophy." She shot me that look, the one that used to make me apologize for existing. They've opened their marriages, both of them, and they're happier than they've ever been. Ruby's pen stopped moving across her homework. Even at 15, she understood the implications better than most adults. "Let me get this straight," I said, setting down my mug with deliberate calm. "Tasha, who's been married 4 times, and Beth, who cheats on her diet more than a politician cheats on campaign promises, are your relationship gurus now?" "They found something real, Alex, something authentic. Love shouldn't be possessive or constraining." "And what exactly are you suggesting, Veronica?" She took a deep breath, like she was about to deliver a TED Talk about polyamory. "I think we should explore an open relationship, see other people, experience life beyond the confines of traditional monogamy." The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of our overpriced refrigerator. Ruby stared at her mother like she'd grown a second head. "Mom," Ruby said carefully, "that's just cheating with extra steps." "It's not cheating if both parties consent," Veronica replied, her voice taking on that lecturing tone she used at work. "It's about honesty, transparency, growing as individuals while maintaining our family structure." I stood up slowly, processing this conversation like a computer running a virus scan. "And if I don't consent to this arrangement?" "Then maybe we need to take a break, figure out what we both really want." The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Ruby gathered her homework, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this was heading. "I'm going to my room," she muttered, shooting me a look that said, "Don't let her win, Dad." After Ruby left, I studied my wife's face, searching for any trace of the woman I'd married 16 years ago. Instead, I found a stranger wearing her features. "How long?" I asked. "How long what?" "How long have you been planning this? How long have you been seeing someone else while working up the courage to ask for permission?" Her face flushed, which told me everything I needed to know. "I haven't... Don't." I held up my hand. "Don't compound this with lies. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories." I walked to where she stood, close enough to see the guilt flickering behind her eyes. Slowly, deliberately, I slid my wedding ring off my finger and placed it on the counter between us. "You want an open marriage, Veronica? Congratulations. You just got a wide-open divorce instead." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there with her mouth open and her perfect plan crumbling around her feet. The guest room became my new headquarters that night. As I lay staring at the ceiling, I could hear Veronica pacing in our bedroom. Her bedroom now, probably texting her enablers about how unreasonable I was being. But here's the thing about being a tech consultant. You learn to solve problems systematically. You identify the issue, gather data, formulate a plan, and execute with precision. My marriage was corrupted beyond repair. Time to run a full system restore on my terms. The next morning brought the kind of awkward tension that makes you understand why some people fake their own disappearance. Veronica sat at the breakfast bar, scrolling through her phone with the intensity of someone planning a military campaign. Ruby ate her cereal in silence, occasionally glancing between us like she was watching a tennis match played with emotional grenades. "I'm staying at Dad's tonight," Ruby announced, her voice cutting through the domestic ice age. "Honey, you don't need to take sides," Veronica said, not looking up from her screen. "I'm not taking sides. I'm taking the side that isn't completely insane." I almost smiled at that. Ruby had inherited my sarcasm and her mother's steel backbone, a dangerous combination for anyone trying to manipulate her. "Ruby, go get ready for school," I said. "I'll drive you." After she left, Veronica finally looked at me. "You're turning her against me." "I don't have to turn her against anything. She's 15, not 5. She can see what's happening here." "What's happening here is that we're trying to save our marriage." "No, what's happening here is that you've already checked out and you're looking for a way to make it my fault." She stood up, smoothing her business suit like armor. "I'm going to work. We can discuss this like adults when you're ready to be reasonable." After she left, I did what any reasonable tech consultant would do. I gathered intelligence. Veronica had left her tablet on the kitchen counter, still logged into her social media accounts. I'm not proud of snooping, but desperate times call for desperate measures. What I found made my stomach turn inside out. Messages with someone named Nolan Pierce. Lots of messages. The kind that would make a sailor blush and a marriage counselor reach for stronger coffee. Nolan Pierce, 31, fitness coach, and self-proclaimed lifestyle influencer. His profile was exactly what you'd expect. Shirtless gym photos, motivational quotes about living your truth, and enough narcissism to power a small city. The messages went back 3 months. 3 months of personal training sessions that had nothing to do with deadlifts and everything to do with my wife's midlife crisis. "Getting stronger every day," one message read. "Can't wait for our next session." "You make me feel alive again," Veronica had replied. "Like the woman I used to be before I got trapped in suburban mediocrity." Suburban mediocrity. That's what 16 years of marriage, a beautiful daughter, and a comfortable life had been reduced to in her mind. I screenshotted everything, not for revenge, not yet, but for documentation. In my line of work, you always back up your data before making major changes. That evening, I called my friend Greg Martinez, an ex-cop turned private investigator who specialized in divorce cases. We met at Murphy's Pub, a dive bar that served beer cold and truth colder. "So, she wants an open marriage," Greg said after I'd explained the situation. "And she's already got someone lined up. A fitness coach named Nolan Pierce. Looks like he bench presses his own ego." Greg laughed. "Those types are usually all show and no substance. What's your play here?" "I'm not sure yet. Part of me wants to hire you to follow them around with a camera. The other part wants to handle this myself." Word of advice from someone who's seen this play out 100 times. Don't do anything that'll hurt your custody case. Ruby's going to need stability, and that means you need to be the stable parent. I know, but I can't just roll over and let Veronica rewrite history to make herself the victim. You won't have to. People like your wife and her boy toy usually hang themselves given enough rope. The next few days passed in a blur of passive-aggressive domesticity. Veronica started staying out later, claiming work obligations and gym sessions. She posted cryptic social media updates about finding yourself and breaking free from limitations. Meanwhile, I focused on Ruby, making sure she felt supported and loved despite the chaos. We ordered pizza, watched movies, and talked about everything except the elephant-sized marriage implosion happening around us. On Friday night, Veronica came home at nearly midnight, her hair disheveled and her lipstick gone. She found me in the living room, reading. "We need to establish some ground rules," she said, trying to sound authoritative. "Ground rules?" "About our arrangement, about how this is going to work." I closed my book and looked at her. "There is no arrangement, Veronica. There's no how this is going to work. There's just you making choices and me dealing with the consequences." "You're being deliberately difficult." "I'm being deliberately honest. Something you might want to try." She sat down across from me, her expression softening into what she probably thought was vulnerability. "Alex, I know this is hard, but we can make this work. We can be happy." "You mean you can be happy? I can be convenient." "That's not fair." "Fair." I stood up, feeling something cold and sharp crystallizing in my chest. "You want to talk about fair?" Fair would have been having this conversation before you started playing house with your personal trainer. Fair would have been couples therapy instead of couples destruction. "How did you—" Know about Nolan. Please. You left your tablet open, and I'm not blind. 3 months, Veronica. 3 months of lies while you worked up the courage to blow up our family. Her mask slipped completely then, revealing something calculating underneath. Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Nolan. And yes, I should have told you sooner. But this doesn't have to be the end of everything. You're right, I said, walking toward the stairs. It doesn't have to be the end of everything, just the end of us. I paused at the bottom of the staircase and turned back to her. Oh, and Veronica, next time you want to destroy someone's life, you might want to make sure they don't know how to recover deleted files. The look on her face was worth every sleepless night I'd had that week. War had been declared. Time to choose my weapons. Monday morning brought the kind of clarity that only comes from having your illusions shattered completely. I woke up in the guest room, checked my phone, and found 17 missed calls from Veronica. Apparently, she'd spent the weekend trying to damage control her way out of the corner I'd backed her into. Ruby knocked on my door around 7, already dressed for school. Dad? Mom's been crying in her room since yesterday. Should I talk to her? That's up to you, sweetheart. But remember, her emotional state isn't your responsibility. Ruby nodded, looking older than her 15 years. Are you guys getting divorced? I sat up in bed, running my hands through my hair. Probably. I'm sorry, Ruby. I know this isn't what you wanted. Actually, she said, settling into the chair by the window, I'm kind of relieved. You guys have been miserable for months. At least now we can stop pretending everything's fine. Smart kid. Too smart, maybe? After Ruby left for school, I made coffee and settled in at my home office. Time to do what I did best. Solve problems through superior information management. First, I called my lawyer, Dana Walsh, a sharp-tongued woman who specialized in high-conflict divorces and took no prisoners. Alex Riley, she said when her secretary put me through. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. You were expecting this call? Honey, I've been practicing family law for 20 years. I can smell a divorce from 3 suburbs away. What's the situation? I gave her the abbreviated version. Open marriage proposal, secret affair, irreconcilable differences. Any children involved? 1 daughter, 15. She'll want to stay with me. Good. Teenagers usually know which parent has their best interests at heart. What kind of evidence do we have regarding the affair? Screenshots, timestamps, location data. Nothing obtained illegally, just information she left accessible. Perfect. And what's your goal here? Custody, assets, or just getting out clean? All of the above. But mostly, I want to make sure Ruby's protected and Veronica can't rewrite history to make herself the victim. Consider it done. I'll start drafting paperwork today. Next, I called my boss, Jenkins, and arranged to work from home for the next few weeks. Family emergency, I explained. He didn't ask questions, probably because his own marriage had imploded the previous year and he understood the drill. With my professional life secured, I turned my attention to intelligence gathering. Veronica thought she was playing chess, but she'd brought checkers to a programming competition. I started with social media. Veronica had been posting increasingly cryptic updates about personal growth and authentic living. Her friends Tasha and Beth were cheering her on in the comments, using phrases like, "You go girl," and "live your truth," with the enthusiasm of people who'd never met a bad decision they didn't want to enable. Nolan's social media was even more revealing. The guy documented his entire existence like he was running for mayor of narcissism. Gym selfies, protein shake advertisements, and philosophical posts about breaking free from society's constraints. What caught my attention were the location tags. 3 months of training sessions at gyms, hotels, and restaurants around town. A detailed timeline of my marriage's destruction, helpfully documented by the man destroying it. But the real goldmine was the comments section. Nolan had quite the fan base, including several women who seemed very interested in his personal training services. One name kept appearing, Lisa Chen, a 20-something influencer who posted thirsty comments on every single one of his photos. I did some digging. Lisa and Nolan had been involved 6 months ago, based on their social media interactions. The relationship had ended abruptly, right around the time he'd started pursuing Veronica. Interesting. I spent the next few days building profiles on everyone involved. Tasha Morrison, divorced 3 times, currently married to husband number 4 while openly flirting with her yoga instructor. Beth Patterson, whose open marriage consisted of her having affairs while her husband worked 60-hour weeks to pay for her lifestyle. These were Veronica's role models. These were the women whose advice had convinced her to torpedo our family. On Wednesday, I decided to take a more direct approach. I drove to Nolan's gym, a trendy fitness center called Peak Performance, that catered to people with more money than sense. The place was exactly what I'd expected. overpriced equipment, motivational posters, and enough mirrors to give Narcissus a complex. I spotted Nolan immediately. He was hard to miss, being the only person in the place who looked like he'd been carved from protein powder and ego. "Can I help you?" he asked, approaching with the kind of aggressive friendliness that personal trainers mistake for charisma. "I'm thinking about joining," I said. "My wife recommended you specifically." "Veronica Riley?" His face changed slightly, confidence flickering like a bad internet connection. "Oh, you're Alex." "That's right. Veronica's told me so much about your sessions together. Very thorough, from what I understand." He cleared his throat, glancing around like he was looking for an escape route. "Yeah, well, Veronica's made great progress. Very dedicated client." "I'm sure she is. She's always been enthusiastic about her hobbies." The conversation continued for another few minutes, with me asking innocent questions about training schedules and membership fees while Nolan grew increasingly uncomfortable. By the time I left, he looked like he needed a shower and a lawyer. That evening, Veronica confronted me the moment I walked through the door. "What were you doing at Nolan's gym today?" "Research. I'm thinking about getting in shape. You've been so inspired by your fitness journey, I thought I'd give it a try." "Alex, don't." "Don't what? Don't try to improve myself? Don't take an interest in the things that make you happy?" She stared at me, trying to read my intentions. "Just leave Nolan out of this." "Out of what? Our marriage? Little late for that, don't you think?" That night, I implemented phase 1 of my counterattack. I created a group chat with several of our mutual friends and neighbors, ostensibly to organize a neighborhood barbecue for the following weekend. "Veronica and I would love to host," I typed. "She's been so focused on personal growth lately, I think it would be great to reconnect with everyone." The responses were enthusiastic. Everyone loved a good barbecue, especially when they sensed drama brewing beneath the surface. I spent the rest of the week preparing, both for the party and for what would come after. Veronica grew increasingly nervous as the weekend approached, probably sensing that I had something planned but unable to figure out what. On Friday night, she made one last attempt at negotiation. "Alex, about this barbecue. Maybe we should cancel. Things are complicated right now." "Complicated how? I thought you wanted authenticity, transparency. What's more transparent than celebrating your new lifestyle with our friends and neighbors?" "You're planning something." "I'm planning to grill hamburgers and serve potato salad. Unless you think that's somehow threatening to your relationship with Nolan?" She flinched at his name. "How do you know about—" "Veronica, I've known about Nolan since the day after you asked for an open marriage. The question isn't how I know. The question is what I'm going to do about it." I left her standing in the kitchen, probably wondering if she should call Nolan and warn him that her husband wasn't quite as passive as she'd assumed. The barbecue was scheduled for Saturday at 4. By 3:30, I was ready for the most important performance of my life. Time to show everyone exactly what authentic living looked like. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect weather that makes you believe the universe has a sense of dramatic timing. Clear skies, gentle breeze, and enough ambient tension to power the neighborhood for a week. I'd spent the morning preparing for what I privately called Operation Transparency. If Veronica wanted authentic living, she was about to get more authenticity than she could handle. By 4 o'clock, our backyard was full of neighbors and friends, all clutching drinks and pretending they weren't there to witness whatever domestic drama they'd been gossiping about for weeks. Mrs. Firth, our 70-year-old neighbor who functioned as the neighborhood's unofficial news network, had positioned herself strategically near the patio where she could observe and report on everything. Veronica emerged from the house looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. She'd dressed carefully, not too casual, not too formal, just right for a woman trying to control her public image while her private life exploded. "Great turnout," I said, approaching her with 2 drinks. "Everyone's excited to catch up?" She accepted the drink but didn't relax. "Alex, please don't do anything embarrassing." "Embarrassing? I'm just being a good host. Speaking of which, I invited a few extra people I thought you'd want to see." Her face went pale. "What people?" Before I could answer, Tasha and Beth arrived, both dressed like they were attending a cocktail party instead of a backyard barbecue. They made a beeline for Veronica, air-kissing and gushing about how brave she was being. "Ladies," I said, joining their conversation, "so glad you could make it. Veronica's told me so much about your book club discussions. Very enlightening perspectives on modern relationships." Tasha, a bottle blonde with the emotional depth of a puddle, giggled. "Oh, Alex, you're so sweet. We've just been encouraging Veronica to explore her options." "Explore her options," I repeated. That's one way to put it. 20 minutes later, my second surprise guest arrived. Nolan Pierce pulled up in his ridiculous sports car, all chrome and compensation, wearing the kind of tight shirt that suggested he'd never met a mirror he didn't like. The moment he stepped into the backyard, the energy shifted. Conversations became quieter, glances became sharper, and everyone suddenly developed an intense interest in their drinks. Veronica looked like she wanted to disappear into the earth. "Alex, what is he doing here?" "I invited him. He's been such an important part of your life lately, I thought our friends should meet him." Nolan approached us with the swagger of a man who'd never faced consequences for his actions. "Alex, right? Thanks for the invitation." "Nolan," I said, shaking his hand with just enough pressure to make him wince. "Welcome to our home. I hope you'll feel comfortable here." The next hour was a masterpiece of social warfare. I introduced Nolan to everyone as Veronica's personal trainer, watching faces change as people connected the dots. I made sure to mention how dedicated Veronica had been to her fitness routine, how many evening sessions she'd been attending, and how much her flexibility had improved. Meanwhile, I'd arranged for my third surprise to arrive fashionably late. Lisa Chen, Nolan's ex-girlfriend, showed up around 6, looking like she'd stepped out of a fitness magazine and ready for trouble. "Nolan?" she said, spotting him across the yard. "What are you doing here?" The look on Nolan's face was priceless. Pure panic mixed with the dawning realization that his past was about to collide with his present in the most public way possible. "Lisa, hey," he said, trying to sound casual. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I wasn't planning to come," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet patio. "But when I heard you were dating a married woman, I had to see for myself." Veronica's drink slipped from her hand, shattering on the concrete. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence that followed. "Dating?" Veronica said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nolan, you told me you weren't seeing anyone else." "I'm not," he said quickly. "Lisa and I broke up months ago." 6 months ago, Lisa corrected. "Right after I found out you were already cheating on me with 3 other women." The crowd was riveted now. Mrs. Firth had abandoned all pretense of polite conversation and was openly staring. Tasha and Beth looked like they were watching a car crash in slow motion. "That's not—" Nolan started. "Not what?" Lisa interrupted. "Not true? Should I show everyone the screenshots of you messaging my friends? Or maybe the photos you sent to that Instagram model in Miami?" Veronica turned to stare at Nolan, her face cycling through confusion, anger, and humiliation. "Is that true?" "Veronica, let me explain." "Explain what? That you're a lying, cheating piece of garbage who targets married women because they are easier to manipulate?" The backyard had gone completely silent, except for the sound of someone's phone buzzing. Probably Mrs. Firth texting updates to the neighbors who hadn't been invited. Now, I said, stepping between them with fake concern. "Let's not let this get out of hand. We're all adults here. We can discuss this rationally." "Rationally?" Veronica whirled on me. "You planned this. You orchestrated this whole thing." "I invited people to a barbecue. I can't control what they choose to discuss." "You son of a—" "Careful," I said quietly. "Ruby's upstairs, and she doesn't need to hear her mother using language like that." The reminder of our daughter's presence seemed to deflate some of Veronica's rage, but not all of it. "This isn't over," she said. "No," I agreed. "I don't think it is." Nolan tried to salvage the situation by approaching Veronica with his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Baby, let me explain. Lisa's just bitter about our breakup. She's trying to cause trouble." "Bitter?" Lisa laughed. "Honey, I'm grateful. You did me a favor by showing me what kind of man you really are before I wasted any more time on you." She turned to Veronica with something that might have been sympathy. "Sweetie, run. This man is toxic waste in designer workout clothes." "Don't listen to her," Nolan said desperately. "She's lying." "Am I?" Lisa pulled out her phone. "Should I show everyone the video you sent me last week? The one where you're complaining about your desperate housewife and how easy she is to manipulate?" Veronica's face went white. "What video?" "The one where he's laughing about how you actually believe he cares about you, how you're just a convenient way to get free meals and hotel rooms while he builds his brand." The silence that followed was the kind that precedes avalanches. I could see Veronica processing this information, watching her carefully constructed fantasy crumble in real time. "Show me," she said quietly. "Veronica, don't," Nolan pleaded. "She's making this up." But Lisa was already queuing up the video on her phone. The sound quality was poor, but Nolan's voice was unmistakable. "She's so desperate for attention, she actually thinks I'm going to leave my wife for her, as if I'd trade my freedom for some suburban soccer mom having a midlife crisis." The phone slipped from Lisa's hand as Veronica launched herself at Nolan with the fury of a woman who just realized she'd been played by an amateur. "You lying, manipulative—" Nolan caught her wrists before she could claw his eyes out, but the damage was done. Everyone at the party had witnessed Veronica's complete humiliation, and by extension, the collapse of her entire justification for destroying our marriage. "I think this party's over," I announced. "Thank you all for coming." The guests began filing out, buzzing with excitement about the drama they'd witnessed. Mrs. Firth lingered longer than the others, probably memorizing details for her inevitable phone calls. After everyone left, Veronica sat on our patio furniture, staring at the broken glass from her dropped drink. Nolan had fled during the chaos, leaving her alone with the wreckage of her choices. 16 years, she said without looking up. I threw away 16 years for that. "No," I said, beginning to clean up the party debris. "You threw away 16 years because you wanted something that never existed. Nolan was just the excuse." She looked up at me then, mascara streaked, hair disheveled, looking more human than she had in months. "I'm sorry, Alex. I'm so sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give Ruby back the stable home she deserves. Sorry doesn't undo the humiliation you just put our family through." "What happens now?" I paused in my cleanup, considering the question. "Now you figure out who you want to be when you grow up, and I figure out how to rebuild what you tore down. Can we try counseling? Can we try to fix this?" I looked at her sitting there, broken and desperate, and felt something that might have been pity. "Veronica, you didn't just cheat on me. You tried to gaslight me into accepting it. You brought that man into our community, into our daughter's life, without caring about the consequences. Some things can't be fixed." She nodded slowly, accepting what we both knew was inevitable. "I'll stay at Tasha's tonight," she said. "Give you and Ruby some space." "Good idea." As she gathered her things, I couldn't help but wonder if this was how all marriages ended, not with passion or drama, but with exhaustion and the recognition that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. The war was over. Now came the harder part, figuring out how to win the peace. Sunday morning brought the kind of quiet that follows storms, deceptive calm hiding ongoing destruction. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, most from neighbors who'd witnessed the previous day's entertainment and wanted to offer support, gossip, or both. Ruby appeared in the kitchen around 9, already dressed and looking remarkably composed for a teenager whose world had imploded in public. "So," she said, pouring herself orange juice, "that was intense. I'm sorry you had to witness that. I probably could have handled it differently." "Are you kidding? That was the most honest conversation our family's had in months." She sat down across from me, her expression serious. "Mom's been lying to herself for so long, she forgot what truth looked like. Smart kid. Definitely too smart." "Your mother's going through a difficult time?" "Dad, stop. I'm 15, not 5. I know what an affair is, and I know Mom's been having one. What I don't understand is why she thought she could get away with it." I studied my daughter's face, seeing traces of both her parents, but hoping she'd inherited more wisdom than either of us possessed at her age. "People make mistakes when they're unhappy," I said carefully. "Some mistakes are choices, and some choices have consequences." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Dana Walsh, my lawyer, calling on a Sunday morning. Never a good sign. "Alex, we need to talk. Are you free this morning?" "Ruby, can you give me a few minutes?" She nodded and headed upstairs, probably to process the weekend's events in whatever way teenagers process family destruction. "What's the situation, Dana?" "Your wife's been busy. She called my office yesterday evening, claiming you orchestrated some kind of public humiliation. She wants to file for emotional distress and is threatening to fight for primary custody." I laughed, which probably wasn't the response Dana expected. "She wants to claim emotional distress? After what she put Ruby and me through?" That's what I told her. "But Alex, we need to be careful here. Judges don't like public spectacles, even when they are justified. What exactly happened yesterday?" I gave her the full account. The barbecue, the revelations about Nolan, Veronica's public meltdown. "So you invited the other woman to expose your wife's boyfriend as a serial cheater?" "I invited Lisa to a neighborhood barbecue. What she chose to discuss wasn't under my control." "Clever. Legally speaking, you didn't do anything wrong. Morally speaking, you're probably going straight to hell, but that's not my department." "What's our next move?" "We accelerate the timeline. I'm filing divorce papers tomorrow, citing adultery and irreconcilable differences. I'm also requesting primary custody based on your wife's unstable behavior and poor judgment regarding men she brings around your daughter. Will that work? With the evidence we have, and after yesterday's public display, I'd say our chances are excellent. After ending the call, I spent the rest of Sunday preparing for the week ahead. I had a feeling Veronica wouldn't go quietly into the night, and I wanted to be ready for whatever desperate measures she might attempt. Monday morning proved my instincts correct. I was working from home when Ruby called me from school, her voice tight with embarrassment. "Dad, everyone's talking about what happened at the barbecue. Someone posted video on social media." "What kind of video?" "Mom and that guy arguing, her throwing herself at him. It's everywhere." I closed my eyes, feeling a mix of satisfaction and regret. "Are you okay? Do you want me to pick you up?" "No, I can handle it. But Dad, Mom's going to lose it when she finds out." Ruby was right. Veronica called me 20 minutes later, her voice shaking with rage. "Did you know someone was recording yesterday?" "I suspected someone might be. It's 2023, Veronica. Everyone has a camera." "This is humiliating. Ruby's friends are going to see this. My coworkers are going to see this." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to have a public meltdown in our backyard." "You orchestrated this whole thing. You planned my humiliation?" "I planned a barbecue. You provided the entertainment." The line went quiet for several seconds. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Colder, more calculating. "This isn't over, Alex. You think you're so smart, but I know things about you too. Things that could hurt your precious reputation." "Such as?" "We'll see." She hung up, leaving me wondering what cards she thought she had left to play. I didn't have to wait long to find out. Tuesday morning brought an email from my boss, Jenkins, asking me to come into the office for an urgent discussion. I found him in his corner office, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact. "Alex, I got a call yesterday from someone claiming to be your wife. She made some serious allegations about your behavior." "What kind of allegations?" "She claims you've been stalking her and her boyfriend, that you've been accessing her personal accounts without permission, that you are having some kind of breakdown and might be dangerous." I sat back in my chair, impressed despite myself. Veronica was fighting dirty, trying to turn my investigation into evidence of instability. "Jenkins, you've known me for 5 years. Do I seem dangerous to you?" "No, but..." "Have I ever shown signs of instability or inappropriate behavior?" "No, but she seemed very concerned." "She's concerned because she got caught cheating and is trying to control the narrative." I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots I'd taken of Veronica's messages with Nolan. "This is what she's really upset about." Jenkins studied the evidence, his expression shifting from concern to understanding. "Jesus, Alex, I'm sorry. It's not your fault, but I wanted you to hear the truth before she tries to poison the well any further." "Is there anything I can do?" "Just don't believe everything you hear. Desperate people say desperate things." Wednesday brought Veronica's next attempt at warfare. I was picking Ruby up from school when I noticed a police car following us home. The officer, a young guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, approached my car in our driveway. "Mr. Riley, I need to ask you a few questions about a harassment complaint." Ruby stayed in the car while I talked to the officer, explaining the situation and showing him the same evidence I'd shown Jenkins. After 20 minutes, he seemed satisfied that Veronica's complaint was more vindictive than valid. "Sir, I have to ask, are you planning any contact with your wife or her friend?" "Officer, the only contact I want with either of them is through my lawyer." "Good. Keep it that way. And Mr. Riley, off the record, your wife might want to be more careful about who she accuses of harassment. Making false reports is a crime." That evening, I called Dana to update her on Veronica's escalating desperation. "She's trying to create a paper trail," Dana explained. "Make you look unstable or dangerous before the custody hearing." "Is it working?" "Not so far. But Alex, you need to be careful. Don't give her any ammunition. No contact, no confrontations, no clever schemes. Let me handle this legally." "Understood." But even as I agreed, I knew Veronica wasn't done. She'd spent 16 years learning my weaknesses, my triggers, my vulnerabilities. If she was going to war, she'd use every weapon in her arsenal. Thursday morning brought her masterstroke. I was having coffee when my phone buzzed with a notification from social media. Someone had tagged me in a video. The video showed me at Murphy's pub the previous week, talking to Greg about the divorce. The audio was muffled, but someone had added subtitles. Fake subtitles that made it sound like I was planning to hurt Veronica and Nolan. "She's going to pay for this," the fake subtitles read. "Both of them are going to suffer." What I'd actually said was, "She's going to pay for this in court. Both of them are going to suffer the consequences of their choices." But without the full context, edited cleverly, it sounded threatening. The video had been posted by an anonymous account and was already being shared by Veronica's friends. along with concerned comments about my dangerous behavior. I called Dana immediately. "This is fabricated evidence," I said after explaining the situation. "Can you prove it?" "I can prove the subtitles are fake, but that'll take time. Meanwhile, this thing is spreading like wildfire. We need to move fast. I'm calling an emergency hearing for custody. Now, if your wife wants to play dirty, we'll show the judge exactly what kind of person she really is." "What do you need from me?" "Everything. Every screenshot, every piece of evidence, every witness who can testify to her behavior. We're going to court, Alex, and we're going to win." As I hung up the phone, I felt something settling into place. Not anger, not revenge, but cold determination. Veronica wanted to destroy my reputation to save her own? Fine. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd been documenting everything from the beginning, and I had evidence she didn't even know existed. Time to show her what a real masterstroke looked like. Friday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for 2 o'clock, and I'd spent the previous night organizing evidence with the methodical precision of someone whose entire future depended on getting the details right. Ruby had stayed home from school, partly to avoid the ongoing social media circus, and partly because she wanted to be there when the judge made his decision. She sat at the kitchen table, supposedly doing homework, but actually watching me pace and organize documents. "Dad, you're making me nervous, and I'm not even the one going to court." "Sorry, I just want to make sure we have everything." "We have everything. Mom's the one who should be nervous." At 11:30, Dana called with an update. "Alex, you need to know. Your wife just filed a restraining order request. She's claiming the video from the bar proves you're a threat to her safety." "Based on fake subtitles?" "Based on her interpretation of events. The judge will hear both cases today, custody and the restraining order. Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I can be." "Good, because your wife just walked into the courthouse with a lawyer who specializes in making men look like monsters." "How do I look?" I asked. "Like a responsible father who's been pushed too far." "Perfect." Veronica arrived 10 minutes later with her attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Vance, who had a reputation for turning divorce proceedings into scorched earth campaigns. Veronica looked composed, almost serene, the picture of a woman seeking protection from an unstable ex-husband. The hearing began with Judge Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who looked like she'd seen every variety of human stupidity and wasn't impressed by any of it. "This is an emergency hearing regarding custody of Ruby Riley and a request for a temporary restraining order," she announced. "Ms. Vance, you may present your client's case." Vance stood up with theatrical gravity. "Your Honor, my client is a loving mother who fears for her safety and the safety of her child. Mr. Riley has engaged in a pattern of stalking, harassment, and threatening behavior that culminated in a public humiliation designed to destroy my client's reputation and emotional well-being." She presented the edited video from the bar, along with testimony about the barbecue incident and my visit to Nolan's gym. "This is a man who cannot accept that his marriage is over," Vance continued, "a man who would rather destroy his wife than let her find happiness elsewhere." It was a compelling performance, I had to admit. If I didn't know the truth, I might have been convinced myself. Judge Morrison turned to Dana. "Ms. Walsh, your response?" Dana stood up with a stack of documents that looked like evidence of war crimes. "Your Honor, what we have here is not a dangerous husband, but a desperate wife trying to rewrite history to avoid the consequences of her own choices." She began with the screenshots of Veronica's affair, the timeline of deception, the evidence of her attempts to manipulate the situation. Mr. Riley discovered his wife's affair and asked for a divorce. Instead of accepting responsibility, Mrs. Riley has engaged in a campaign of false accusations designed to portray herself as a victim. Dana then played the original audio from the bar, showing how the subtitles had been fabricated. This video was edited and posted by an anonymous account that we can trace back to Mrs. Riley's social media network. But the real bombshell came when Dana called her first witness, Lisa Chen. "Ms. Chen, please tell the court about your relationship with Nolan Pierce." Lisa, dressed professionally and speaking clearly, described her 6-month relationship with Nolan and how it had ended when she discovered his pattern of targeting married women. He specifically sought out women who were vulnerable, who were having problems in their marriages. He would love bomb them, make them feel special, then use them for money and status while pursuing other women on the side. "And did you warn Mrs. Riley about this pattern?" "I tried to, at the barbecue, but she was so convinced that she was special, that he really loved her, that she wouldn't listen until she heard the video of him mocking her." Judge Morrison looked intrigued. "What video?" Dana played the audio of Nolan calling Veronica a desperate housewife and laughing about manipulating her. The sound of his voice filled the courtroom, and I watched Veronica's composed facade crack slightly. Your Honor, Dana continued, this is not a case of a husband threatening his wife. This is a case of a wife who made terrible choices and is now trying to avoid accountability by painting her husband as unstable. The judge turned to me. Mr. Riley, I'd like to hear from you directly. Did you threaten your wife or Mr. Pierce? I stood up, feeling the weight of the moment. No, Your Honor. I discovered my wife's affair and asked for a divorce. When she tried to manipulate the situation by claiming she wanted an open marriage, I decided to show our friends and neighbors who she really was. I didn't threaten anyone. I just stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own actions. And the barbecue incident? I invited people to a party. I can't control what they chose to discuss when they got there. Judge Morrison made notes, her expression unreadable. Ms. Vance, do you have any evidence of actual threats or violence? Your Honor, the pattern of behavior? I asked for evidence of threats or violence. Do you have any? Vance shuffled through her papers, clearly realizing her case was weaker than she'd hoped. The video. The video that's been proven to have fabricated subtitles? Anything else? The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. I thought not. Judge Morrison looked at both parties. Here's what I see. A marriage that ended badly, a wife who made poor choices, and a husband who responded by exposing those choices publicly. None of this rises to the level of requiring a restraining order. She turned to the custody issue. As for the child, Ruby Riley is 15 years old enough to express her preferences. Ruby, would you like to speak? Ruby stood up from the gallery, looking nervous but determined. Yes, Your Honor. Where would you prefer to live? With my father. He's been stable and honest through this whole thing. My mother, she's been lying to everyone, including herself. I love her, but I don't trust her judgment right now. Judge Morrison nodded. Mr. Riley, you'll have primary custody. Mrs. Riley, you'll have supervised visitation until you can demonstrate that you've addressed the issues that led to this situation. The restraining order request is denied. As the gavel fell, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. Not victory, not vindication, just the simple relief of having the truth acknowledged. Veronica sat stunned, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. As people began filing out of the courtroom, she approached me. Alex, Don't, I said quietly. Just don't. You made your choices, Veronica. Now you get to live with them. I never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You meant for it to go exactly this far. You just thought you'd win. She looked around the courtroom, seeing the wreckage of her carefully constructed narrative scattered like debris after a storm. What happens now? Now you figure out who you want to be when you grow up. And Ruby and I figure out how to build a life that doesn't revolve around cleaning up your messes. Outside the courthouse, Dana shook my hand with satisfaction. Not bad for a day's work. What about the divorce proceedings? After today, she'll settle. Her lawyer knows she doesn't have a case anymore. Ruby appeared at my side, looking older than her 15 years, but somehow lighter too. So, what now, Dad? I looked at my daughter, this remarkable young woman who'd somehow emerged from the wreckage of her parents' marriage with her integrity intact, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Now we go home, we order pizza, we watch terrible movies, and we start figuring out what comes next. Sounds perfect. As we walked to the car, I caught a glimpse of Veronica standing alone on the courthouse steps, probably calling Tasha or Beth or whoever was still willing to listen to her version of events. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the lies, the manipulation, the attempt to destroy my relationship with my daughter, and the feeling passed. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. Ruby and I drove home through the afternoon sunshine, the radio playing something optimistic, the future stretching ahead of us like an open road. It wasn't the ending I'd planned when I got married 16 years ago, but it was honest. And after months of lies and manipulation, honesty felt like the most radical thing in the world. The war was over. We'd won. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, that felt like enough.